Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Twilio, Auscontact's national gold sponsor, and it's entitled Personalised CX, 3 steps to unlock new value from more personalised interactions. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, Audrey, Mark and Eli, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation, as well as provide ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A. I'm Fiona Keogh, CEO of Auscontact and your moderator for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping. Remember to interact with us today to maximise the benefit, and as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with a recording of the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions or make comments for Audrey, Mark or Eli or myself from time to time. Don't forget, we're going to be having that Q&A at the end of the webinar, so type your questions as we go along so you don't forget to ask them. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid. Or you can revert to the confirmation email and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes will be available there for you. I know that lots of you are familiar with asking questions, but we really should try out the Q&A button on the control panel just in case. And the question is, what award ceremony was held in the US yesterday? It starts with an E, and I just thought we'd just move right away from COVID questions. I think there were nominees and winners like The Crown, Ted Lasso. There were some Michelle knows, David knows. Well done, guys. Chris knows. Yep. So got a very switched on bunch of people. That's fantastic. So it actually was the Emmys. For the fashionistas, not so good. So let's introduce our speakers for today. So we have Audrey William, who is the Principal Advisor at Ecosystem, Mark Hannon, Contact Centre Specialist at Twilio, and Eli Kennedy, Customer Experience Solutions Specialist at Twilio. But before we hear from Audrey, we've got some more work for you to do. So we have a poll. And the poll for today, Jess, if you could launch it, is does your organisation strive to provide a personalised experience for your customers? Love this first response. Yes, and we're damn good at it. Or yes, but we'd like to do better at it, or no. So Audrey, your ecosystem works globally, and I know you're based offshore. What's ecosystem actually seeing at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of organizations, Fiona, want to get to that level. They want to get to that level of personalization, but I think they're somewhere along that journey. And there've been a few bumps along the way, and we've got data to show that later as well, but it'll be great to see what the audience has to say.
It will indeed. So I think with that, Jess, if you could share the results of the poll, that would be super. I love it. Mm-hmm. Love it. You're right in the sweet spot, Audrey. That's really, really good to see. Well, enough from me. Let's hear from you. Over to you, Audrey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fiona, and a very good afternoon to everyone here today. My presentation today will exactly address this topic, and you'll hear from me as well as the other speakers Fiona introduced. And a lot of the data you're going to see from today's research is from Ecosystems digital priority study, as well as Ecosystems contact center research. So since we had a poll question earlier, I think this is really something very interesting that I'd like to show the audience right now. And that is Improving CX remains the top business priority in Australia. And you can see from this chart that, business leaders know that if they're going to get to that level of personalization, if they're going to drive new innovation for customers, they have to fix this problem. And this has really been accelerated throughout the pandemic. In fact, when we asked this question, 1.5 years ago or prior to the pandemic, a lot of their focus was on revenue growth, winning and retaining customers, increasing business agility. Now, whilst all of that is important, customer experience is something that organizations are grappling with. And that's because customers' behaviors have changed. The way your customers think and behave is also starting to put a lot of pressure on how you devise a CX strategy. I also like to call out that 41% said improving employee experience is important. And that's, got to do with the pandemic today. For a lot of organizations, human centricity has taken center stage. And if you really look at proactive customer engagement and how companies want to get to that, it requires a lot of hard work, because if you want to start alerting your customer before a problem occurs or wow them with a certain experience, then you've really got to understand the data and also the flow of conversation across multiple journeys. And you know what? The challenge is no one customer thinks alike. Every customer is so different in the way they think, the way they behave. And this is the complexity of why you've got to take personalization so seriously. And if you look at just this example, a customer that wants to buy a handphone, no one customer thinks alike. Some will just go to their family and friends and say, you know what, I'm just going to buy that product. Some will just browse the internet for months before they even make up their minds. Some will just walk to a retail store to buy it. And this happens with any kind of product, any kind of service. Some will just call an agent or chat with a chatbot for more information. So what this actually tells you is that if you want to personalize CX, not only do you have to start connecting the dots, but you've really got to pay attention to that journey and start understanding the data across all these journeys. And, this is the reason why there are a lot of problems today in deepening customer engagement. We got a lot of this data from our research. And one of the common challenges, if you just take a step back and picture that diagram I just showed you about complicated customer journeys, you will know that at every of those touch points or every of those interactions, marketing has been involved in that. Whether it's a campaign, there's been a lot of information that's been shared by sales and digital. And then you've got also the contact center involved in that, whether it's through the multiple channels that customers are using. Now, the challenge, and this is why it's the biggest challenge, and it's highlighted as the first, is sales and marketing have their own KPIs today when it comes to driving CX. And the contact center have their own KPIs. So they're dealing with the same customer, but the KPIs are all different. And that's why, it's so hard to get consistency. The second point is there is a lot of inconsistency today in how the data marts are aggregated and cleansed. So there's multiple repositories of data that are sitting, and it's a wealth of information out there in terms of, customers' preferences, behaviors, likes and campaigns that are being run, number of clicks. But again, it's all sitting in silos. And this is the big problem, because once you have data sitting in departmental silos, and these silos have specific KPIs, it's going to be really difficult to deepen the customer engagement. And I'd also like to, mention that, whilst agents, rely a lot on the CRM, and, CRM is being used a lot today by, again, the marketing teams and sales teams. It's important to note that, when you look at bringing your customer through this journey of understanding the data and you want to cleanse the data, CRM should not be your only single source of truth. And that's important to take a step back and just understand that, because there has been a lot of reliance on CRM as a way to personalize the customer experience. And to give you an example of that is today, if you look at, a lot of CRM systems, they're getting really sophisticated. They've got a lot of, AI and analytics running on the back end, and they've really come a long way. But at the core of it, a CRM solution still organizes data in a way that it's about your name, your phone number, your address, maybe how much you've spent with the company, and they go into sales details. But it's also a great tool today for sales, for example, if they want to nurture leads and see how the leads are growing over time before it actually closes. It also is used as an effective tool, for example, for marketing to sometimes run campaigns because they need all that granular detail about the customer in terms of their address, their phone number. But you can see that it's really got limited functionality if you really want to deepen that customer engagement. How are you understanding their behavior? Are you listening to the customer through sentiment analysis and AI, for example? How do you know about all the touch points I talked about earlier? And are you actually collating that into your CRM? Because your customer today thinks differently, they're behaving differently, and they've got multiple touch points. Do you have enough data to understand their changing habits and behaviors? And a lot of that conversation could be happening with the contact center, with the agents. Is that being fed back into CRM? Well, the answer is no. And this is one of the reasons why CRM should not be your only single source of truth. I think the other complexity and challenge as you're on this journey of wanting to go through achieving better personalization is, apart from CRM data and marketing automation data, and, there's a lot of data from just the contact center applications alone. If you look at the data collected to voice platforms, to social media monitoring solutions, loyalty program systems, web chat and knowledge bases, chatbots. Companies today are having these multiple repositories of data. And, the challenge is, I was just chatting with a bank not too long ago about this exact topic. And one of their challenges, they said to me, is they've got to start consolidating their systems because they realized that they had 3 legacy email systems running. 3. And this is common in a lot of large and medium-sized enterprises. They know they have to consolidate and relook at all their applications, but they also know that they've got multiple solutions that are just redundant and not being used. So bringing all of this together is so critical in that step towards personalization. Because if you don't do that, the challenges will continue. And this is why customer experiences are siloed, inconsistent, and broken. And a lot of organizations are trying to fix that problem. And, this was pretty evident from the data. We asked, what is the biggest dilemma facing a lot of CX leaders in Australia? And, do CX leaders have a single view of their customers? And you can see that only 14% feel that they've created an fully omni-channel experience for their customers. Now, 14% is a really low number. 14% just says that some organizations now are on that journey of getting the data integrated, but a large proportion of customers are still on that journey, but they've got complications. The data is not matching. The same customer is trying to call the call center, visiting the store, communicating with the brand through SMS, through WhatsApp, but all of that is not synchronized. So how do you solve that problem? You've got data sitting in CRM, but CRM is not talking to some other systems. This is the reason why it's such a big struggle to attain that fully omni-channel experience. So where should companies head and what is really important as they're on this journey? And you're really going to hear this from the speakers as well, but the one thing that's starting to become really important, and in my research and conversations with CX leaders as well, is There is a lot of talk today around an intelligent customer data hub or a CDP, a customer data platform. And it's so essential now for organizations to fix this problem. And if they want to get this problem right in terms of personalizing the experience, but also having the data make sense for them, then this is the first step organizations should take. You've now got to, also look at all the multiple repositories you have, consolidate your systems, start with that approach. You've got to aggregate the data from multiple sources. How do you do that? It requires quite a bit of work on the back end, but in an automated manner. And these solutions today allow you to do that. The challenge in the industry is every time there is a new repository or a new data that's created where you can store data, the data again doesn't make sense. It's another data. Someone has to go there. Someone has to clean it up. Someone has to make sense of the data. Now, the power of a CDP or an intelligent customer data hub is it cleanses the data. It makes sense of the data. So now when the agent or anyone in the organization that has to engage with a customer picks up that data, there is an actionable profile. There's action that they can take. It's readily available for them. So, and one thing enterprises should be encouraged to do is they need to get out of this mindset of maintaining data silos. It's absolutely critical. And you've got to understand now which channels are becoming the norm in communications. If I switch gears a bit, I'd like to say that today, you can't just dictate a 1-800 number or email for your customers to reach you on. Customers' behaviors have changed. It's been accelerated during the pandemic. If you look at asynchronous messaging, that's growing in importance. A channel like Twitter, for example, some customers just don't want to call a contact center anymore. They don't mind waiting for 2 or 3 days for the problem to be solved because it's not urgent and someone's attending to it. So asynchronous communication is growing. And how do you now think, about integrating video, for example, as part of the experience? And I experienced this recently with a company in Melbourne, online shopping retailer, very smart approach to how customers buy and fill up their shopping carts. But they've now gone a step further to integrate video into that experience. And they've integrated that into the whole contact center. How brilliant is that? So you're giving the customer the feel of what the products are like, having that personalized chat with them before they carry on shopping. So do think about how channels are changing, which channels are becoming the norm, where are people gravitated towards? And you can build these capabilities today, if you've got an agile platform as a service capability where you can orchestrate all these channels well, but you can add all this functionality like video into an app, really quickly and really easily in a short matter of time. But also these solutions can be added at it's at low costs. And you can build what you want according to how the customer behavior changes. And that is important. So you don't just stay status quo. And you have to simplify the work for your agents. I think this is a big topic in the industry today. Agents are stressed out, agent attrition is high. And if all these points you see here today are not integrated for them on a single dashboard, if they don't understand the conversation thread from web chat to Twitter, to the in-store experience, to email, to voice, and if they have to ask the customer to keep repeating themselves, or if you just put in a knowledge system and a bot that talks to them, well, then they'll get confused. There are just too many layers of information coming, too many screens and too many dashboards. So looking to simplify this whole process for the agent is also absolutely critical. And that's why a whole approach with having a single dashboard is very important. Because they're the ones talking to your customers. They're the ones fielding the difficult questions. You want to make their life simpler. And finally, before I conclude, I'd like to say that it's so important today to, take a step back and reimagine CX, because these experimentations are critical and necessary. The world has changed so much because of this pandemic. in the last 2 years, your customers' behaviors have changed. The way they want to engage with a brand has changed. So must you as an organization. You have to now take a step back and start from ground zero. Reimagine the role of the agent and understand what you want to build from that. Reimagine how your contact channels will differ in the next few years, and what does that mean for you as a brand, and reimagine how you want to serve your customer and use the particular touch points as well as the data. And finally, just reimagine the role of the customer, the contact center. Once you start doing that, you realize that these are the gaps, and you'll start working through them effectively. So with that, I'd like to thank you. It's been great, presenting, and I'd like to hand this back to Fiona. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Audrey. Thank you so much. And before we hear from Mark, we're going to ask you to do some more work. So we're going to run a poll, and the poll is, CRMs are often perceived to be the single source of truth. Is this true for your organisation? Or are your agents still having to open multiple applications to source customer information? And the options are, our CRM holds absolutely every piece of information. Our CRM holds most customer information, but not all. We use many different applications to serve our customer inquiries. We don't use a CRM. And Mark, I'm going to ask you, what are you seeing? What's Twilio seeing at the moment?
We're seeing that CRM is not the single source of truth for all organizations. We're finding that a number of organizations these days, just with the sheer volume of applications that are currently utilized to run customer service or even marketing, it's too broad and too vast for that to all reside in one place. So it's good to see that Audrey's data from the analyst perspective is somewhat aligning to what we're seeing in the field from a Twilio customer perspective. But we're seeing that customers are really trying to get as much of that information across all of those platforms into a single place where possible.
Thanks. I couldn't agree more. And look, this really holds out what Audrey was talking about in terms of the responses. 56% use many different applications to serve their customers, and I'm not surprised to see that we don't have a CRM, 6%, and our CRM holds most customer information. So with that, Mark, enough from me, and over to you. Looking forward to it.
Fiona. Hi guys, as Fiona and Audrey mentioned, my name's Mark Hannon. I am one of the contact center specialists here at Twilio in Australia. I've been with the company for about 2 years now, and something that I've noticed is that having worked at multiple contact center vendors in the past, Twilio has a very different approach to doing things. And I find it exciting seeing where we're going as an organization, and a lot of that is kind of driven by data from organizations like Eco360 from Audrey, but more importantly, seeing where the customers and where the market is actually moving when it comes to customer experience. And something that we're seeing as a really big trend right now is this concept of personalized customer conversations. So like Audrey mentioned around the collection of customer data across multiple solutions is really helping some organizations that are harnessing it drive much more personalized CX, and they're using it to their advantage. So what we thought might be useful in today's session is to just go through 3 quick little tips that we're seeing some organizations implementing and seeing rapid growth or rapid improvement in CX based on just a couple of small tweaks to the way that they engage with customers. And before I do that, I thought it might be just quickly useful to go just to take a quick backward step as to kind of what has driven our movement in this space. And we wanted to look at what are customers kind of more, what are they struggling with on a day-to-day basis? And these are kind of the four big drivers that we're seeing right now. The first one, I mean, this is nothing new to the industry. A lot of organizations have been striving towards omni-channel. It's been a notion for a number of years now, but some customers have still struggled to do that. And you know, the kind of end result from that is that you're potentially missing customers with important information. And you know, a useful example of that is whereby if your only method of communicating with customers is outbound via email, then when something timely happens, you know, is a customer missing that because emails are less likely to be read than, say, something more like a text message or a post from WhatsApp or something like that. So there's this notion of meeting your customers on the channel that is going to be most relevant to them. The next one being more around providing a seamless experience across those channels. So, you know, it's one thing to obviously implement an omni-channel experience with customers, but it's then up to you as an organization to be able to make sure that the experience is consistent across those different channels. So if you're going to serve customers in one way on voice, it's really good to make sure that that same experience can be somewhat replicated if you're engaging with a customer via chat or SMS or Facebook or one of the other digital channels. And we see this quite commonly resulting in scenarios where, you know, we've probably all had to experience this in the past, where you've had to repeat your information over and over as you kind of change channels or engage with an organization in a slightly different way. And the next point being around the ability to keep up with customer expectations. The pandemic, again, was probably a real big wake-up call for a number of organizations in that they perhaps weren't quite set up to meet the requirements of a digital way of engaging with customers. So there was a huge rush to market to obviously try and, you know, scatter around and come up with a solution or a way of operating to support that need. And that's likely, again, going to change again in another couple of years. So organizations really need to ensure that they're set up and structured in a way that they can meet that. And so the way that we're seeing that this somewhat resulting is that you know, and some of you have probably experienced this before when you contact a contact center, is that you sometimes feel more like a ticket rather than an actual customer. So, you know, you've probably had the scenario where you're talking to somebody on the phone and the impression that you get is that they're just trying to get through you so that they can get onto the next one. So the concept of being able to personalize an experience so that somebody doesn't feel like a ticket is obviously something that a lot of organizations are striving towards. And the last one here being more around the change of industry regulations. And we're not going to focus on this too much in today's session, but we're seeing that this is a big focus for a number of organizations when it comes to things like changes in payment card industry updates, or, you know, potentially updates to their specific industry regulatory requirements. You know, customers keeping up with all of those constant changes can sometimes be a bit of a battle as well. So now that we've kind of set the scene a little bit around where we're seeing customers or organizations coming from, let's jump into our quick little 3 tips to give you an idea on where we're seeing organizations get good results. The first one being around conversing with customers on the channel that they prefer to be conversed with on. So, you know, in my experience, depending on how I want to engage with an organization will sometimes dictate which channel I actually choose to contact that organization on. But something that I now have as an expectation as a customer is that the person that I'm speaking to, I want them to have the contextual history of what my previous engagements with that organization have been like. There's an expectation that when I contact you, you know who I am, you know what my previous conversations have been like, so that you have a better way of actually managing my customer engagement. And so a quick little example of this was recently, I was ordering something online, and I had noticed on the tracking information that my package had been sitting there for several days. It hadn't moved, it had been sitting there, and I thought, given that it's COVID, I don't necessarily really want to call the courier company. I know what that result is going to look like. I'm going to get on hold. I'm going to be sitting there for, you know, potentially a long amount of time whilst I wait for somebody to answer my call. If I'm lucky and I get through to somebody and they're able to answer my question on the spot, great. If not, I'm going to require them to call me back maybe with an answer. So I'm thinking, preempting what that experience is potentially going to look like. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to reply to the SMS that I received with my tracking information and see if I actually get a response from them. And the result was I got a response back from Sam here, who was more than happy to take a quick little look into it for me. And after it was probably close to 2 hours, I got another response back from him saying that he had there was a delay in their processing facility. He apologized for the delay, and he updated me that it was going to be back out for delivery this Friday. So from my perspective, I was like, perfect. I haven't had to spend or invest a large amount of time in getting such a short, simple little answer from a question. And my net result was about 60 seconds worth of effort for a quick response that may have taken much longer if I had to call in or maybe send an email in and wait for somebody to reply on an email. So this is a great way to get a response quickly on the channel that I thought was most logical for this type of question. And it got me thinking that I don't necessarily need you as an organization to dazzle me with customer service. I just need you to, get me an answer quickly. And that's all I was really looking for in this example. So, it saved me from having to have the small talk and go through the notion on the phone. This was a really great way from my perspective as a customer, to get the exact quick answer that I was looking for. The next little tip that we've got here is kind of touching a lot more on what Audrey was talking about earlier, which is this notion of capturing information from multiple sources across your business. Your customer information is going to be living in more than just your CRM. So it's typically going to be living in places like, obviously the CRM is a starting point, but then there's your marketing systems, you've got your website analytic tools, you've potentially got a help desk ticketing system. There's all of these different backend platforms that are retaining and existing with customer information. Organizations that are harnessing that information, synthesizing it to the point where they can build out a rich customer profile, so that when a customer does contact them, their agents are given a fantastic amount of context around who they are, potentially what products they like, what's their favorite color, how often do they purchase from you. So as a holistic look at me as a customer, my agent knows exactly who they're dealing with. And the typical magic moment that we're looking for in this space is that when you contact that organization, the person that I speak to, if I've never spoken to them before and they know my entire history, that just makes that entire experience that much more seamless. But the next point to that is around making sure that information is proactively given to the agent. If it's not presented to the agent in a friendly manner, then that context is typically going to be lost and potentially not leveraged as part of the conversation with your client. And so if we take a quick look at one of our customers who does this quite well, there's an organization called Travel Perk. They're a corporate travel management organization. They're typically dealing with organizations who need their corporate travel booked for them. So things like accommodation, car hire, organizing all the aspects of travel for them. They wanted to go down the path of reimagining what that customer experience looks like when their customers contact them. So they got to thinking, what does the experience need to look like from the agent side? And so they spent a little bit of time in putting together an initial concept as to how they want this to be represented. What information do my agents actually need to manage a customer inquiry? And let's make sure they get that in an easy to digest way on their screen. So they toyed around with some concepts here and ended up with a solution that looks somewhat like this, whereby they had organized their customer information on the screen into three columns. One on the left being whereby the agent desktop interface has all their customer contacts coming in. In the middle of the screen has the information for the conversation that they're on right now. And then on the right-hand side, an information panel that has rich customer information from sources like their back-end travel management system, information around what organization this customer's from, details around what their frequent flyer points and plan are, as well as any potential issues that may be occurring with those flights or accommodation right now. So that little panel on the right becomes a really rich information for that agent to quickly glance at and potentially preempt why that customer might be contacting them in the first place. So this was a way that they were able to essentially design a UI that had all of the information proactively given to the agent to manage that particular type of engagement at that particular time. The last little tip that we wanted to quickly go through here is we've spoken a little bit around omni-channel. That's more from a customer point of view. Our next point that we really want to make about this is making sure that that omni-channel experience is easy for your agent. So, organizing all of your customer interactions into a single place where they're able to engage with customers in a single pane of glass really makes it easy for your agents' lives. Your agents' lives much easier, where they're not having to alt tab and flip-flop between different screens or different applications to manage different customer conversations. By giving them a simple UI that is designed to manage them is going to make their lives easier and help provide that personalized experience to the customer. So that was kind of like a quick little overview of the three little tips that we wanted to present. But shortly after our poll question, we will have Eli actually run through some live demonstrations to actually show us some of what we've just been talking about now.
Thanks, Mark. And Eli is very much going to bring it all to life. The poll question, Jess, if we could launch, do your contact center agents handle multiple customer inquiry channels? That is voice, chat, email, messaging, or are they siloed to service a single channel? For example, voice only. So the options are multi-channel, single channel, or we don't have a contact center. Okay, so Eli, what are you expecting to see? Are you expecting to see the number one response is we don't have a contact center? Because it's like a stab wound to my heart, not having a contact center, and get on board and get one. What are you expecting to see, Eli?
I'm expecting that in 2021, most people are going to have a multi-channel experience. Okay.
And I think you're probably bang on the money. 53% of the audience have said multi-channel, 33 single channel, and the people that need to talk to me are those that said we don't have a contact center, or 13% of you. Thank you. It's over to you to share what it's really like, Eli.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. I am Eli Kennedy. I am a solutions engineer at Twilio in Australia, and I am, if you like, Mark's best friend. So I have been building and designing and implementing contact centers for the better part of the last 20 years across Australia and New Zealand, and it's really all that I do. So this is my favorite thing in the world, is building unique customer experiences. So today, what I wanted to do for you all was firstly launch a brand new entity, being the Auscontact Bank, which I think is going to really hit the neobank digital-only banking market in Australia really hard. But secondarily to that, I wanted to pull together some of what Mark had been talking about in terms of that single pane of glass and omni-channel experience. Just kind of paint the picture for what I think a good agent experience to deliver personalization for customer experience would look like. So let's get into that. I have Twilio Flex open here, which is our single pane of glass omni-channel contact center UI. And I also have a mobile phone that's going to represent a customer. Let's call him Mark Hannon. So Mark is one of the early adopters and one of the best customers of Auscontact Bank. And Mark has a credit card with us. And Mark has also moved his home loan relatively recently to Auscontact, although he moved on the same interest rates he was on before, and he hasn't yet taken advantage of some of the new amazing finance packages that we're bringing to market. So Mark's going to have a couple of different customer journeys with us today. So the first thing that Mark started doing with Auscontact is he started using his credit card, and he's using his credit card in a fairly typical pattern, right? He's using it for major purchases or for items of convenience. But Mark spent the last few months in lockdown living in Melbourne, and so he hasn't had many opportunities to get out and about. And one of the things that Auscontact has done is implemented a fraud prevention mechanism. And that fraud prevention mechanism has noticed that an unusual transaction has appeared on Mark's account. So the first thing that we're going to do is notify Mark that that's taken place. And we can see that we've reached out to him via SMS, which is a classic Twilio channel for us to make communications on. And we're going to start off by greeting him by his name. There's a few really important things there. Firstly, we're going to contact him from a known phone number, right? So Mark immediately feels more safe about his communication with us. We're going to greet him by name, showing that even though this is an automated message, that we actually respect the fact that he's a human being. And again, we lower Mark's threat perception threshold. We're communicating with him about something negative that's happened on his account and something he could perceive as risky to him. So we want to take every action that we can to make Mark feel reassured that we know who he is, that we're who we say we are, and that we're going to help him. We're going to say, look, we've noticed this suspicious transaction. Would you like us to call you to help investigate? And Mark's going to say, yes, please. And this is really important that we've done it this way around. And the reason that we've done it this way around is if we had given Mark a URL shortened link or just said, Mark, can you please contact us? We're effectively not showing any respect for him. We want to say, Mark, we care, and we're going to make a callback interaction. We're going to queue it. When you have a human who's ready to speak to you to work through this, we're going to call you, and you're not going to spend any time waiting on hold. So we've initiated the notification, but we're also showing a deep respect for Mark as a person. And that's going to straight away put Mark on the front foot with the person that he's speaking to. Having received this interaction over on the left-hand side of the screen in Flex, you can see some interesting things. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is, as the agent, I have a UI that's presented to me that is by no means generic. This is not like looking at the front page of a CRM, or even Mark's account page within a CRM, or even a ticket page within a ticketing system or CRM system. We know that we are making a follow-up call to Mark about a suspicious transaction. And we can even see how did this happen, that Mark requested the follow-up, so he's expecting this call, and he got that notification via a mobile phone. That immediately means when I introduce myself to Mark, I can show him that I know this information about him, that I know how we've reached out to him, and again, increase that umbrella of trust. The next thing, I think from our poll, we saw, what was it, about 58% of our respondents in that poll said they have more than one data platform. And in this case, we have a CRM system, and that contains all of the information about Mark, what his account numbers are, where he lives, his lovely photo ID. It's a great picture of you there, Mark. But we also have a core banking platform, and that core banking platform tells us about Mark's transactions. And we actually have a third platform that we share with our PCI compliant payment card providers, right? Which is our fraud prevention platform, which gives us things like device trust scores. It shows us which payment gateway a credit card transaction was processed through. And we actually need data from all three of those sources brought together to help us answer Mark's question, to help us get to the bottom of why he's got a suspicious transaction. So rather than have the agent need to go to several different places, the best thing that we can do is pick the data that we know is relevant for this interaction from each of those systems. We know it's about a particular transaction. We know that it's a suspicious transaction follow-up call. So that being the case, we can get exactly what we need to pull everything together to give Mark that, or to give the agent that single view of Mark. We can even see the credit card in question. Great. We're going to take advantage of this amazing Twilio Solutions Library plugin to have a queued callback with him. We're going to place that outbound call. I'm going to receive that call and then immediately put it on mute. In fact, I'll hang it up. So we've been able to place that outbound call to Mark. But one of the things that we need to do now is understand that it really is Mark. Mark believes that he's talking to the bank, but we need to make sure that we're talking to him. And we don't want to drag him through a long-winded process of asking him his full name and his date of birth and his address. It's kind of passé, and it's also going to increase our average handling time significantly. We're going to push Mark an authentication request. We know he has our mobile banking application, so he should be able to receive this request on his phone. He's received the request. And pay attention to that authenticate button. As I hit approve in the mobile app, we can see that that changes in real time. So without needing to, we were able to asynchronously push that notification. Mark was able to approve it, and we were able to get on with the conversation without doing a dance, getting Mark to tell me his mother's maiden name just to access the account. We've been able to verify with Mark that he did not, in fact, take a ride with shady cabs in Melbourne, and they have processed that transaction overseas. So he does want to dispute that $28 charge. So I'm going to go ahead and lodge that dispute for him. Cool. So that's the end of that interaction in Mark's journey. The key takeaways I wanted you to take away from that are we want to remix a UI to give the agent exactly what they need for this call. We want to show respect for the customer by queuing their interactions with them not on the telephone. And we want to make it as efficient and as easy as possible for the agent by using things like asynchronous authentication tools. So that's gone really well. Mark is happy with the service that he's receiving from us, but he'd like to take it a step further. He's noticed when using our mobile application that there are new interest rates available. There's a promotional offer, and he wants to take advantage of that promotional offer. So Mark logs into the mobile app, and he would like to start a web chat with us. Just like Mark was talking about in his section of the presentation, the mobile app and chat can be an asynchronous form of messaging. And this is an example of the kind of interaction where you would want that, where we're refinancing a mortgage. It's not something that's going to happen in a single conversation. I'm going to start a conversation. We've got a simple bot in front of us introducing ourselves. I'm going to say, change mortgage. The bot's going to confirm that that's what we want. And it's going to find a human being for us. Mark's chat has now arrived. And there's some really interesting differences to this interaction to the previous one. Firstly, we can see the entire context of this chat. We can see what Mark has asked the bot for, so we know what he's asking for. Had we had previous conversations about this subject, we'd be able to present those in the same UI. So Mark can have this asynchronous conversation where he says, hey, look, I'm interested in reviewing some interest rates, but I want to talk to my personal banker. Can you get that person to start responding to me? And his conversation, as far as he's concerned, can happen when he's available, when he's ready, in his breaks at work. The conversation from the Twilio side will queue and be able to be answered as fast as possible. And I'll draw your attention to the main window of the screen, and you can see that we're seeing something completely different than we were on that suspicious transaction. And this is really that single pane of glass concept brought to life. The idea is this is a completely different interaction type. Mark wants to have a long conversation about refinancing a mortgage. There is different information that's going to be useful to us. We want a mortgage calculator available to the agent. In particular, we want to understand his customer journey. What has brought him to this point? You would have heard from Audrey about customer data platforms and about the rich set of information that we can collect about a customer as they journey throughout our different digital and physical storefronts. And Segment by Twilio is an amazing product for that. And so we've been able to track Mark's behavior. We can see that he had the fraud alert. We can see that he had previously processed an address change for his credit card. We can see he's previously changed his name with us via an inbound call to the contact center. In all of his interactions with us, including his navigations within the mobile application, have been made obvious to this agent. I can see the exact journey that Mark took to get here today, and I can see exactly what it is that he wanted to talk about and what he was interested in on each of those points in his customer journey. That gives me an incredibly rich and powerful set of information that I can use to guide this interaction with Mark. Okay, the very last thing that I'm going to show you is I just wanted to throw in one extra channel. And the reason for that is we've been talking a lot about Omni-Channel, and we've been talking a lot about how it's hard. But I wanted to show you how Omnichannel with Twilio can actually be really easy. So I'm going to use WhatsApp. WhatsApp's an incredibly common platform of choice today. And I'm going to say, hey. And you can see immediately Auscontact Bank is replying to me, and I am experiencing the same bot, the same customer experience that I was getting via our native in-app web chat. And immediately routed to an agent with a nice, easy conversational UI with context provided. So that's the omni-channel experience. Consistency across channel, meeting me in the channel that I want with a bespoke, meaningful interface presented to the agent that identifies who am I and what am I calling about today. I hope you've enjoyed that demo. And with that, I am going to stop screen sharing and over to you, Fiona.
Thanks, Eli. Oh my goodness. So Auscontact is now a bank. I used to work for a travel management company. I used to work for a bank, and I used to work for a credit card company as well. I feel like you've been stalking me, but thank you for that. What a great demo. And I've got a question, and I was going to maybe be for Mark, but maybe for you, Eli. Is you used SMS quite predominantly throughout the demo. So are you, maybe it's you, Mark, are you seeing many companies actually using SMS to talk to customers? And just while Mark pulls his thoughts together, we're running a poll during the Q&A, and we'd love to get your responses to that. And we'll just keep talking. Mark, you want to tell us what the answer is?
Yeah, we're seeing an increase in it right now. So historically, I think it's probably been something that SMS has been used quite prevalently for things like alerts and notifications to customers. And now that there's the ease and the ability for organizations to start using that as a conversational channel, there's becoming a lot more of an uptake for it right now. So, I think a lot of people have been restricted in the past by being able to do that two-way conversation SMS flow with a contact center agent. But now that technology is quite simple and readily available, we're starting to see a lot more uptake of that. And with the use of SMS in everybody's day-to-day lives, especially in certain demographics, they choose and they prefer to use SMS. So whether it's just an age thing, or perhaps English is not your first language, or there's many different reasons why we're seeing a big uptake in people using it as their preferred channel.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Audrey a question about, you talked a lot about building an intelligent customer data hub, or a customer data platform. Why is this critical to achieving CX excellence?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Fiona. I think if you just looked at what Mark and Eli presented, there's clearly a lot of disconnect today. You've got marketing collecting their data, you've got the contact center looking at data, you've got sales and digital, and there are too many silos, and this has been going on for far too long in the industry. And I think if you want to get to that level of data synchronization, you want to start making sense of the data, cleansing the data, then you've got to think differently. You have to say that, we can't just think in silos anymore. And I think Eli demonstrated that very beautifully about how the data now is freely available. It just pops up to the agent, but it's also the web browsing behavior. Are you taking advantage of that? Because maybe your customer just sits in that kind of channel, and they'd love a pop-up from a chatbot that can lead to a live call with an agent. So I think, getting out of the silos and then start making sense of the data is absolutely critical. Thanks,
Audrey. And I think this next question follows on really nicely. So, Twilio, you guys talked about what, Eli, you demonstrated what it is you do, but, what CRMs do you work with?
Do you want to grab that, Eli, or do you want me to?
Sure. All right, I got it. Okay, so There are out-of-the-box adapters for large CRMs like Salesforce and Zendesk. And then there are known good integrations with other very large players like your ServiceNows, your Microsoft Dynamics, HubSpot, Zoho, etc. And most of those are either Twilio productized, so it's point and click to deploy that integration, or they are pre-made assets that Twilio have already developed for you. So there is not a heavy lift of integration work. However, the whole point of Twilio is that it is an open developer platform. So any CRM in particular, the thing we see most commonly is businesses that have built their own system, right? They've got their own in-house CRM/business system that they use for, perhaps it's their banking platform, or perhaps it's for a ride-sharing company, it's their booking system. And that is where the agent lives. And so if that's where the agent lives, then that is the thing that we integrate with Twilio Flex. And that can be done with standardized build effort.
If I could just add something to that as well, is that we're finding a lot more organizations these days are building their own bespoke CRMs. Organizations that are finding that the off-the-shelf CRM potentially sometimes doesn't quite fit their business requirements. So coming up with something internally themselves is a better option for some organizations. And organizations that have taken that approach generally find it difficult to find platforms to integrate to. So they've kind of siloed themselves into an issue where they're basically are stranded with their contact center, and they find it troublesome to integrate with other contact center platforms. And that's something that is bread and butter for Twilio. We love that type of organization that has that mentality, and our solution is designed to really work with those people.
Thank you. I've got maybe a tech question. I don't know. This is from Brett. Brett would like to know how many days of Twilio time is needed to establish a simple flex window.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure, Eli, if you want to have your views or not, but it varies. And a lot of it comes down to how many different components you're integrating to and what platforms you are integrating to. Flex is designed to be spun up in a matter of minutes so that you could have a working solution in a day. But then it's very much around the additional effort and work that's required to plumb it into different platforms. That could take days, that could take weeks, that could take months. It really does come down to the complexity of what you're trying to actually achieve with the integration. So Eli's example that he presented today has potentially days worth of effort into it. Not sure if you agree with that, Eli, or not.
It's fair.
Others may go deeper than that.
Right. So complexity is what's going to drive the time frame.
Definitely.
So I'm going to ask a people question of Audrey, because we're contact centres, even though two of you weren't. And it's about the role of the agent. As we know, today is fairly stressful, and agent attrition remains high. It hasn't changed. So simplifying their roles is critical. So Audrey, in your opinion, how can contact centres achieve that simplicity?
Yeah, look, I think Mark, had a very beautiful term there I like to use. He called it the Omni-Channel Agent, and that's brilliant. I think we think so much about the Omni-Channel customer experience, but the Omni-Channel Agent is still lacking in so many organizations because, again, there are too many pop-ups for the agent every day when they're working. There's the knowledge base popping up. There's a chatbot giving them intelligent things to say. They've got their CRM. And if you think about the agent, especially if they're under pressure and the customer's really, asking them some really difficult questions, they really need simplicity. They need the data synchronized in one place. And it's just got to be simple, as simple as that. It's just got to be simple that they now can speak intelligently. And I think working on that is a lot of hard work, but it's an important step to take. You have happier agents, you're going to reduce attrition.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost at the hour. I cannot believe that. So I'm going to ask for some closing remarks from all of you. So Audrey, if I could please start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think, you heard from everyone, including yourself, Fiona, in the polls that we are, that there's a lot of changes in the industry, and the pandemic has accelerated that change in terms of customer behavior. So I think it's important to now take a step back, reimagine CX, reimagine all the things I spoke about the role of the agent, what you want customer service to look like, and then design that process. It's absolutely critical you do that because that's the way you're going to break out of this and be successful.
Thank you. And Eli, our demonstrator.
Yeah, I think my advice for everybody is perfection doesn't exist, but improvement should be constant. So small changes, iterate fast, test things on your agents, keep the things they like that make things better, keep the things your customers like, but change a lot and do it quickly.
Thanks, Eli. And finally, Mark.
I feel like Eli kind of stole part of my thunder there. I was going to essentially go down the same sort of path in that don't try and boil the ocean from day one. Think small, implement something small, get some value straight away. And because what you may find is sometimes your perception as an internal, from your internal organization may not necessarily be what your customers are looking for. So trying something quick and easy and looking at what the results are before going all in with your next option is something that I would suggest.
Thank you. Well, we still have one remaining question, which I know we'll get to after the webinar. So if I could take the opportunity to thank Audrey and Ecosystem and to our National Gold sponsors, representatives Mark and Eli from Twilio. We're so grateful for your time and information today, and also a demonstration that went absolutely brilliantly. So well done, Eli. I love it when a demo goes well. To everyone that's joined us today, stay safe. I hope everything goes well for you. We all come out of lockdown and we all, don't go too burko, just happy together within our respective bubbles. And see you next time. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.